All right. So welcome. This is the candidate forum hosted by the Community Alliance for Better Government. And we're a local Evanston watchdog group, and our mission is furthering government transparency and responsibility and also anti-racism in Evanston. We are delighted to have you here. As Tricia said, we will be recording this and posting it on YouTube and on our Facebook page. So the questions that we're going to be asked have been sourced from individuals and organizations representing marginalized voices, which we feel are not always heard in these discussions. The questions have not been shared with any of the candidates prior to today. So we feel that this will be a completely objective forum, even though there are some candidates who have worked with CABG in the past. We want to give a full opportunity for all the candidates to put their best face forward. We certainly do not see this as any kind of a gotcha. Really want this to be a respectful discussion between candidates and the public. Several of you who have asked questions I know are in the Zoom, partly to save time. Nick, my co-moderator, and I are going to be actually asking the questions. If there is time and if you feel that your question was not adequately responded to, you can put a note in the chat that you'd like to ask a follow-up question and we will try to get to you. We're starting at 9:30 and we will go to 11, and I know a couple of the candidates have to be off by 11, so that is definitely a hard stop for us. So I think we will just go ahead and get started, and just want to introduce Nick, my co-moderator, Nick Korzanowski, who is also on the board of CABG and who will be heading up our endorsement committee. So with that, I think we will go ahead and get started. So the first question for all of you, and will be, oh, sorry, I forgot one of the most important things, which was introducing the candidates. So let me go ahead and do that. And I'm introducing the candidates alphabetically. First, we have Darlene Cannon, who is running for the 2nd Ward. She's a local activist with Reclaim Evanston and the Evanston Voter Initiative, a founding member of Evanston United, and a commissioner for the Equity and Empowerment Commission. So welcome, Darlene. Next, we have Juan Geracaris, who is the current 9th Ward Council member, who was appointed in November 2022 and is an administrator at Northwestern's Kellogg University of Management and a founding member and vice president of Evanston Latinos. So welcome, Mr. Geracaris. Next, let's see, well, we do not have Patricia Gregory, so we'll move on to Krissie Harris, who is the current 2nd Ward Council member, who was appointed in September 2022. She's manager of student life at Oakton Community College and a former board member of the YWCA Evanston North Shore. So welcome, Ms. Harris. And finally, we have Kathy Hayes, who is running for the 9th Ward. She's a retired case manager, social worker, and analyst who worked with Cook County for 35 years in public government. So welcome, Ms. Hayes. All right, so now we will get to the first question, and we'll go in alphabetical order, and then we'll flip in reverse. So the first question is, what do you see as the most pressing issue facing your ward currently? So we'll start with Ms. Cannon.
Okay, good morning, and thank you for having me. The most pressing issue I see is the rapidly changing demographics in the ward. I am currently on the Equity and Empowerment Commission and have collaborated with Byron Citro Lopez from the 25th Ward to bring forward an ordinance against predatory developers harassing residents. Last term when I ran, I did a lot of door knocking, and I'm currently doing a lot of door knocking, and people have indicated to me that they're receiving phone calls, emails, text messages, things in the mail, asking them to sell their homes. So with the anti-developer ordinance that the Equity and Empowerment Commission all voted for unanimously, and it will go directly to council, that will hopefully deter developers or if there's realtors who are involved in this practice they will be penalized and penalized by fines if they continue to harass residents. I think that, that is one of the biggest issues. Obviously, we have a rapidly growing Latino community. So ensuring that we are translating any literature that comes out in Spanish and making sure that we have the resources that are necessary so that they are aware of healthcare, financial assistance, any of those types of things that are needed for the Latino community or anyone coming in from any other country, that we have all the necessary sources so that they are able to understand where they can go and get help. So,
all right, thank you very much. Next, I'll go to Juan Geracaris. Same question.
Sure. Just a clarification. I was appointed back in February.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. No worries. I think when I speak to people, I think affordability in general is a big concern. I think the 9th Ward is the one ward that is only residential, really. There's no, I think I'm a little bit lucky that I don't have to focus my energies on a business district. And so when I think of the 9th Ward, and the reason why I'm doing this is I think the residents are what make Evanston unique. And, I'm sure all of us here have had friends who have had to move because of the inability to find an apartment or rising just housing costs in general. So because of this, I've, got a seat on the Housing and Community Development Committee. I'm really trying to focus a lot of my learning and energy on finding ways to keep people here in Evanston. Another part of that is being a good steward and fiscally responsible, so we don't have to raise property taxes. This last go around, was a learning experience for me, dealing with the budget, and I've advocated our first draft. The people were got to read it. Had a recommendation from staff to raise property taxes, and that was something that myself and a handful of others were.
Okay, about 15 more seconds.
Okay.
About 15 more seconds.
Sure. And so that's one thing I advocate for. And, I don't want any regressive taxes or fines and fees for community members.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit. Ms. Harris, same question.
Good morning. So knowing that the 2nd Ward is the most economically and racially diverse community, it is the duty of the alderperson to make sure that it stays that way and that all voices are heard, because economically we also supply the tax base, much of the tax base. If you go down Dempster and Dodge and Main Street, we supply most of the tax base in the community. And the racial diversity is so important to make sure that all residents are heard, that their needs are met, that it isn't just status quo or just the loudest voice. It's all voices of Evanston. What I've said the whole time is that while we're a specific ward, there's nothing that separates us but air. So my concern is for all of Evanston, that if you do right in one place, that can only filter into the other wards and into the city council. So making sure that all voices are heard, regardless if it's the loudest, the most, maybe people consider articulate or diverse, that all of those voices are heard and respected is the most important, not just in the 2nd Ward, but also in the whole Evanston community. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Harris. And Ms. Hayes, same question.
Hi, thank you very much. Yes, many of the issues have been definitely articulated right here that hit the 9th Ward. Evanston, as you know, is landlocked, and we are predominantly residential here in the 9th Ward. We believe in lots of families starting here and continuing on for multiple generations. We do wish to have accessible, affordable housing for not only the middle class, but lower class and disenfranchised individuals. Housing all over the United States is a challenge for people and for governments. And we're hoping, especially when I go out and speak, people are always talking about the issues of how they can get accessibility to housing that they can afford. With that goes economic development. Unfortunately, a lot of people, due to the pandemic, have lost their jobs, have lost their normancy regarding income. So changes have to be flexible to meet those issues. We're coming up against some challenging questions on how we're going to go forward in economics as well as accessibility. Transparency is the best way to do it, but creative solutions is most important. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Nick?
All right, so we are going to start with questions from residents. Our first question is from Kevin Brown, who's actually in the Zoom with us right now, of the 9th Ward. And his question is, what is your specific agenda to help Black residents of Evanston? We're going to ask 2 minutes. I'll keep a timer. And why don't we start? Do you want to just start alphabetical and then we'll go reverse on the next question? Or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, start with reverse order. So start with Kathy and work our way back up.
Okay, sure. We'll go Kathy then.
Okay, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question again? How we want to ensure Black residents in Evanston?
Question is, what is your specific agenda to help Black residents of Evanston?
Mentorship is a very powerful tool for all residents, especially Black residents. We have some very talented African Americans that have come through Evanston, but unfortunately had to leave due to economics with their star talent and their capabilities. My hope is that from mentorship, whether it is for small business, whether it's for students, whether it's for women who need empowerment, that we are able to put together a mentorship and neighborhood type program that do 2 things. 1, give people lots of references and resources, and 2, help them understand and acclimate those references and resources, not just know about them, but actually have the ability to interject with them and interchange with them. So mentorship is a great thing. I know it sounds kind of basic, but it is a power tool that can help generations go from one level to the next level at their own individual pace. A lot of African Americans feel a bit ignored by the community that they were raised in, that their history is in, and that they have given a lot of their tax time and dollars to. So for inclusion to be more than just a word, we're going to have to work neighbor by neighbor, person by person, to help build them up and build up a community that is as equal as all the rest of Evanston in progress and access.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Harris.
Thank you so much. So currently I'm working with the staff for the city of Evanston, who has provided the city with a plan in which they think they should follow through. I think the main things are finding ways to dismantle racism. It's not a nuance to Evanston. Unfortunately, it is a national founding principle. And we have to find the ways in which to dismantle that. But most definitely the first part in doing that is calling it out, looking at the predatory ways in which the city may conduct business and do business, and making sure that our residents are clear that that is not acceptable, making sure that our businesses know that it's not acceptable, and also making sure ourselves as city stakeholders know that that is not acceptable. So I am working with the team, an outside agency that is coming in and looking at the practices, because one of the main things that you have to understand when you're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion is that you have to hear the voices of those that are being disenfranchised and harmed, that you have to listen to what they're saying and not go off what you think is the accurate or synthesis of that information. You have to hear the voices and let them speak. and then find remedies collectively, not just on your own intuition, but collectively. How do we fix this harm? So I'm working on that. We're looking at, or I am looking at, how do we get the community involved? I've always said that the community engagement is very important. And what do our residents need? I'm a resident. What do I need? My voice is just as valid as a resident as it is as a council member. So working together with the community to get the right solution to dismantle this. And I think Evanston is the place to do that, to get that great work started. It's hard work. We know that. Everybody knows that. But I'm in for the run. I'm here for the race. It's a long race. It's not a sprint. And so I'm here for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Geracaris.
So equity is one of my concerns. I don't think that there's any municipal government that has a great track record of looking out for all the marginalized communities. And so I think it's like an interesting journey to start. I think, you know, we're committed to equity. I don't know. I'm not a member of the Black community, so I just have to listen. I think that's the most important thing on my role, is to listen and try to be an ally. I think one initiative I have that's still in committee, you know, I spoke with the chair of the Equity Empowerment Commission when I heard that there was an equity scorecard being developed there. And after a couple discussions, I have a referral coming through rules that will add an equity check when we make legislative referrals, that there is visibility and collaboration with the Equity Empowerment Commission. We are not, you know, I don't want to speak for the Black community, but I want to use, you know, voices in the community and have them check and, you know, make sure that we're considering all equity things. You know, everybody's not everyone has the same view and, you know, everyone has blind spots. And so I think we have to be collaborative and, you know, build equity into the process, because if you're looking at equity after the fact, you're going to miss things. And it's a constantly evolving thing we have to work on.
All right, thank you. And finally, Ms. Cannon.
Thank you. So I do realize that, you know, racism is a national issue, and I just don't feel that we can afford to wait for things to change on a national level. We need to work on things right now. You know, the city of Evanston is a member of GARE, and I haven't heard that we're utilizing that resource in regards to the Black Employee Report. There are things that we can do, and as I've said before, that, you know, they're courageous. We look at our management, and first of all, we should be hiring people who are from Evanston. But looking at our management, are the complaints coming from, you know, upper management and leadership? We need to reevaluate whether these are the type of people that we should have working for the city. We should evaluate whether we can, who's been passed up for promotions. Is there some way that we can rectify that as well? I mean, the city has, you know, has a race issue, has had a race issue for decades, and it seems like to me that we're not really resolving anything. We're just kind of pushing it down the road. And like I said, until we work with organizations like GARE and implement some things, I think that unfortunately it might continue to be business as usual, because like I said, this has been going on for decades. So thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. So there's a community that I think we don't often hear from enough, and that is people with disabilities. So our next question comes from Lelia Perky, who is a First Ward resident, and she's a student living with cerebral palsy. And she has a lot of questions about accessibility walking around downtown. She says that letting snow pile up in areas that are not shoveled often poses a great danger to those with disabilities who are walking in the ice and snow. Also, some people with disabilities, especially wheelchair users, have difficulty getting up high curbs if there's no ramp available. What will you do to make sidewalks accessible for all disabled people in Evanston? And Ms. Cannon, we'll start again with you and then go back down.
Thank you. So let's see, in regards to the disabled community, I had a sibling that was disabled. And I do personally understand the lack of, when I was, trying to take him to doctor's appointments, the inability to be able to get into certain places. So, I mean, I think we should work with, the state or local organizations to see what we can do to make sure that our buildings, especially downtown, that are frequented, that they're accessible. We should make sure that, snow is not piled up, because, we might have residents who are in wheelchairs that need to get into locations like the library or the post office or whatever. But we need to make sure we hold these businesses or these parts of the city government accountable to make sure that they are making it accessible for everyone. And like I said, making sure that we have doors that are easily accessible, that will open up, and that we have ramps so that people can go on and have access to these locations like everyone else who might not be in a wheelchair. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Geracaris.
Thanks. So this is a problem that the city actually has a 5-year plan for the sidewalk improvement. The next 2 years are focused on sidewalk improvements around the hospital and medical facilities, as well as schools, and then continuing to address pretty much every sidewalk, adding sidewalks where there's not any right now. But this is something that I think historically we haven't really taken into account. Also, I've had residents reach out about ADA accessibility. There's work being done finally on Ridge with the bus routes, because a lot of those bus stops are not ADA compliant. That should be happening next summer. But again, we have to work with our community and find out where the issues are. My wife works at a corporation and does a lot of ADA accommodations. And so, I bounce things off of her. There, was a resident that reached out that was blind and had issues with our website. And, I worked with city staff and made sure, and it was, most of our website is pretty good, but, we found out that some of the forms did not work with text to speech translators. And so that's something that's important. And I think we always have to be listening and addressing, problems when they come up. And if there is specific parts of the sidewalks that are dangerous, let us know. The clean team is also shoveling downtown, which unfortunately they can't reach every place, but I think we also have to expand sidewalk shoveling programs. I don't want this also to be punitive.
5 more seconds, Mr. Geracaris.
Okay. Yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you so much. Ms. Harris, same question.
Good morning again. So you're right. ADA is a civil right It is so much past doing the right thing. It's a civil right. And we as a city have to be accountable for that and making sure that we are doing the right things, again, by all of our citizens, not just the most vocal citizens. If there's blind spots that we don't know, please let us know. And it doesn't have to be just your council member. You can let anybody know. But we can work with our public works department to make sure we're cleaning those sidewalks. If there's areas that are heavily trafficked by a specific population, again, let us know so that we can make sure that we're ensuring that we as a city are living up to civil rights. That's so primary and so important and fundamental, starting right there. And I'm sorry if that is happening and it is our fault. We'll work at doing better by that. We don't know what we don't know. But I think one of the things when I first got on council is we're looking at hiring somebody to help us understand where our blind spots are and creating councils that will help us understand the needs of our residents, because it's so unfortunate that we don't look at disabilities, again, as a civil right that it is. And it's usually, most people think it's just what you see. But as Councilmember Geracaris mentioned, it's the unseen as well. It's the things that we don't know. So we have to do better as people, but I'm imploring you as residents to help us be better. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us how we can serve you, and then hold us accountable if we're not doing that. So on both sides of it, hold us accountable, but also let us know what we're doing wrong. So I'm committed to doing civil rights work all the time. And I'm asking the residents to join us in doing that as well. So good question. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you very much. I come from a background of working with government that requires civil rights work to be a constant 24/7 task and right. ADA accessibility for all of our residents is highly important. And while doing and conversing with residents through the Ninth Ward, they talked about the very same things that Mr. Juan had said and stated regarding the bus routes, regarding the curbs and things. Unfortunately, most of our residents don't know that there is a 5-year plan. And we as an institution, meaning the city, need to articulate to the residents that there is a 5-year plan, that they are working on bus shelters and curbs, and where. I understand that many of the improvements got waylaid due to the 2-year pandemic. However, they're back on the schedule and on the charts to be started on for this spring break groundbreaking. And residents have been, unfortunately, struggling with these issues with children in wheelchairs, people who have physical disabilities, to get from one point to the other. It is very difficult to go from your home, especially here in the Ninth Ward, to downtown with many of these bus routes and bus shelters that don't exist. So they are very vulnerable out on the street. Yes, we definitely need to be ADA accessible and compliant, but we definitely need to have input from the residents. But many times we need to do a little bit more about communicating with the residents who to contact, where to contact, and how to contact. If you have a disability, your ability to contact people may be interrupted by some of the limitations of the systems that we have at the city. So yes, please, I do encourage folks to communicate with council and the city to see where we're at in these schedules and to see how this construction that is plentiful coming up this spring will impact their ability. We need to have all public institutions ADA accessible, whether it's the library, the beach, the park. All of these things should have been done off the top, but this is where we're at. And we need to know from our residents how we can make it better for everyone to enjoy all of Evanston all of the time. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, Nick.
All right, so we have some questions were collected from participants in the Spanish language participatory budget session, and we've got a collection of them that we'll be asking throughout this forum through Erica Castro, who is the coordinator of Hispanic Outreach and Engagement for the United Catholic Ministries of Evanston. The first question from that collection is, what will you do to provide access to affordable mental health services? And we will start with Ms. Hayes.
Luckily, the Ninth Ward is very close to St. Francis Hospital. And some of the issues that are coming up with St. Francis Hospital and a partnership with the city that we're working on in the Social Service Committee, of which I'm a part of, is the living room and providing access services to community members that will come to the living room for counseling, resources, some therapy sessions, and so forth. This is a format that has worked in other suburbs and is earmarked to break ground here. But the more immediate issue is things that we're doing with the Family Focus Welcoming Center for those who need translation and welcoming into this community as new people, as new residents to the city. We want them to be able to find the resources. Half of the fight of having liberty, of having being able to exercise and having a quality of life, is knowing and understanding the systems that are around you. Our hope is that the Welcoming Center will do that and more, help them network housing, social service agencies, therapy, counseling. Many people that come to any part of the city are coming, especially with issues regarding that are traumatizing and need to speak with someone who is a professional. Also, we've asked that many of the organizations, social service and therapy organizations in Evanston, have people who look like the patients that they are treating. So we want people of color to be able to articulate some of the issues with patients that are of their same culture, and may be a bit more empathetic. We want to be able to have language translation available in all languages, even sign language.
5 more seconds, Ms. Hayes.
So the work is ongoing. I think Ms. Krissie has said earlier that it is a constant journey. It is not just a one-stop shop. And we hope that all of those things will work together to heal everyone that comes here.
Thank you. And Ms. Harris?
So can I ask you to repeat that question? I was writing it down and I can't write as fast as I can hear.
Of course. What will you do to provide access to affordable mental health services?
Okay. For some reason, I thought I heard housing. So I think the first step is understanding our capacity, understanding what the problems are that are out there, and then providing the resources. Resources are the key to everything. And with resources come funding, and making sure that our funding scale is appropriately balanced to help those in need. Our social service agencies need more funding. The pandemic has proven to show where our weak spots are. People suffered in isolation. People had outlets that then disappeared. People had services that then dried up because people weren't out spending money. So the main course of action is funding these different resources that are trusted resources. We have to make sure that these are resources that our residents who need the help are going to, that they trust, that we provide services getting to and from these places if they don't have the transportation readily available to them to get help, bringing the resources to them. Ms. Kathy has already mentioned the living room, the welcome center that provides translation, but being boots on the ground is so important because many times our individuals that are challenged aren't out looking for help. Help needs to be looking for them. And we need to make sure that we push that agenda and destigmatize the image of what mental health looks like and how to go about fixing and working with that. It's a tricky thing. It's a very tricky thing, and you want to do it with compassion. You want to do it with scientific research. You don't want to just go half-cocked and think you're helping somebody. You really want to use the data that helps.
10 more seconds.
Okay. So again, financing what we believe in, providing the services, providing the resources that will help those in need, temporary or long-term. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Geracaris.
Thanks. Mental health is super important. We have a shortage of counselors who speak Spanish, and it's hard to get people in touch with counselors who can help them. That being said, Kathy brought up a couple of resources. The Welcoming Center is something I've been advocating very strongly for even before I was on council, and that's going to be opening up soon, and that's a very exciting thing to have in the community. I think for the Latino community, I know that some of the most impactful work or things that have been I felt the best about on council is when I've been able to put people in touch with resources. And I've had, and I'm pretty sure that they would not have necessarily reached out to anyone else. But the fact that I can speak with residents in Spanish, my Spanish is not great, but I can communicate. I think, it's really hard for, people who come from other countries and from different cultures to know how to navigate our system. And I think it's really important to have people putting them in touch with the resources that are out there. We were able to put, a family, a teenager that was having issues in touch with Anita and get counseling. And that's something that was really, I felt great about. There, also, I think Kathy mentioned trauma. There's, working with migrant families. So when I'm not on city council, Evanston Latinos.
10 more seconds.
Okay. People come here and you cannot even believe the trauma they go through. And that's something that recently me and my organization were able to put someone in touch with counseling, and that's been very rewarding and something that's important to me.
Thank you. And Ms. Cannon.
Thank you. So I think working with, organizations like Evanston Lens, Evanston Latinos, and making sure, that we do have counselors that are able to translate so that, as Juan had indicated, that there is a lot of trauma involved with trying to get here to Evanston after traveling from unsafe conditions and getting here. And there's a lot of trauma involved in that. And knowing where to go to get the help that they need. People obviously they need help with housing, they need help with food, employment. It needs to be translated so that they know exactly, what they're getting into. And counseling is critical too, because like I said, the trauma and mental health that needs to be addressed. We need to have counselors available, people who look like them also. I think that that's very important as well. And we need to, like Kathy said, the living room as well. That's going to be a good resource. I, wish that it was up and running right now so people can utilize it. And with the Welcoming Center and Family Focus as well, that, our Latino residents can get the assistance they need, as well as any other people from other countries that are coming.
About 10 more seconds, Ms. Cannon.
That need assistance as well. So I think that, and I hope that, we can do a little bit better as a city and as a community to really make sure that everyone can get the help and support that they need.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. So the next question, someone had mentioned housing earlier, and we've had a lot of questions from the audience about housing. This one comes from Sue Lolbach of Connections for the Homeless. Close to half of Evanston residents struggle with housing costs, yet we seem to keep rejecting affordable housing proposals without suggesting alternatives. And she mentions that in 2017, the city decided not to fund the housing opportunity for women affordable development in the second ward. And of course, there's currently a debate going on about whether or not to allow the Margarita Inn to continue to provide homeless services through Connections for the Homeless. So her question is, first of all, do you support the Margarita Inn proposal? And if you don't support that, and if you don't support these other proposals, what is your solution for the best way to deal with our needs to provide affordable housing and shelter for the homeless? And we'll start with Ms. Cannon.
Okay, thank you. So I think that, housing is critical, but we need to make sure that we are putting in housing to help the families here. We have families in District 65 and probably in 202 and outside of that who need housing. People need 2, 3, even 4 bedrooms. And I can't get excited about micro units when because a family of 4 or 5 can't live in a micro unit. And also I think that, we should be thinking about housing people with dignity. I think that the model of putting people, all low-income people into one building, I think that's, an old model that's kind of based on the projects that were on the south and west side. I think that we should be looking at putting people in housing, mixed income housing. And I think you said, can you read the part again about how? I think you said something about that. There was a question about that.
Well, the question was, if you're opposed to projects like the Margarita Inn or the other affordable developments that have been proposed, what do you think is the best solution to provide affordable housing and housing for homeless population?
Right. So, the thing is that with the How project, it was handled differently than in other projects throughout the city. I think that, as I've previously said before, they should have came to the table and talked to the residents and told the residents, what it is that they want to do. And when we talk about, how, they're not included in being a part of the community. They are almost like they're separate. So like I said, having housing where we have people of different economic backgrounds living together and not housing a lot of low-income people together. With the Margarita Inn, I've been following it and I've heard both sides. I don't have, a feeling either way, but I do want people to be housed and people housed with dignity and ensuring that the people who are going to be living there, that they're going to get the proper counseling and support that they need so that they can transition out of that housing into the next phase. And what is the next phase? I don't know.
10 more seconds.
Thank you. I don't know what the next phase is, but I would love to hear about what happens after, they're in the Margarita and what are the next phases for them, because quality of care is essential to me. So, all right. Thank you.
This is a really big question, and it's actually a combination of questions. So I'm going to give you each 3 minutes instead of the usual 2 minutes. So Mr. Geracaris.
Sure. I'm 1,000% in favor of the Margarita Inn. I've visited. It's great. They do house people with dignity. And so I'm in support of that. I'm also one of the co-sponsors with Jonathan Newsma to the new licensing model for these sorts of residences. So I'll just leave it at that. Then as far as affordable housing, so there are tons of things we need to do. I have worked with Max from Sealy from Connections. He's working on the equitable zoning project. Had him at a ward meeting to tell people that this is happening. And that's, we have to change our zoning. Part of the reason why rent and property is so expensive is partly because of zoning. And zoning historically has been used to segregate us and also to keep property values high. And so that's something we have to work on and we have to really dig into. And that's what I want to keep on doing in the Housing and Community Development subcommittee. We also, a couple of things I'm really proud of is that the city has bought property and, plans on using it for affordable housing. I think it's like almost a whole block area on Emerson, and I can't remember the cross street, but those are blighted properties that we purchased, and we will develop that. We purchased property on Howard, and so I think as a council we are committed, and we have to move forward and do something to facilitate people staying here and people coming here. Also on the side, I'm meeting with people who have interesting like urban planning backgrounds and trying to put them in touch with people at the city. Like we need more development and with affordable units, and I think that's totally possible. And it's not one, unfortunately there's not one thing we can do. There's probably 15 things we should be doing, and I'm committed to doing that work.
All right, thank you very much. Which direction we're going? Ms. Harris.
Yes, thank you so much. So as people, if you read the Evanston newspapers, we're currently under injunction. So being the newest person, I'm not very clear what that means. So I am not going to comment on the Margarita Inn at this time, just because I'm not sure what injunction and hold order means. But as far as housing in general, yes, we have to do better in Evanston. We have to look, as Councilmember Geracaris mentioned, zoning. People don't want it in their neighborhood. They don't want different type of housing in their neighborhoods. They want it somewhere else. And we have to look at what that means for the city. If we want housing, and that's what we stand for, then we have to have it all over Evanston. And we have to make it accessible for people who wish to live here, make our community a better community. So looking at our zoning and forcing all of Evanston to embrace it in their backyard, in their area, is important, and putting our dollars where our mouth is. As Councilmember Geracaris mentioned, we have purchased property to make these affordable housing units. I agree with Ms. Cannon when she says that it should be mixed income. There are places like that that already exist, but we need to push that agenda and potentially cut back the fining system, where if you don't meet this quota, then you pay a fine. Well, that's the easy way out, and that's not what we should be advocating for in our community. It's tricky. It's very tricky, and we have to be open to being creative in how we house people. And once they're here, we have to embrace they're here, regardless of how we felt about why they got here, how they got here, where they are. It's incumbent on us as residents to then embrace them and not isolate people based upon their income and their financial ability and their economic status and their race and their ability. It's incumbent on the residents to embrace these people and make them feel welcome and not outcast them further because we didn't want this establishment here. You get past that point and you work with who you have and you make it welcoming. And my philosophy is with any of this, at some point, You make solutions, and you create solutions for people who are here and make it happen. You stop complaining and you make it happen, and you make them be as successful as the people that they're surrounded about. You give them opportunities. You help lead. You don't just abandon people. You lead them. You help them become better them, which makes Evanston a better us. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And Ms. Hayes.
Thank you. As we've heard from everyone who spoke on this issue, it is a very hot topic here in Evanston. There is no silver bullet. And since Evanston, as many other cities in the world has had a history of segregating housing, limiting housing, disenfranchising people with housing, we have to do all hands on deck type of remedy, from zoning, from mixed housing, from wraparound services for disenfranchised. There are a lot of things that we have to do at one time. It does feel overwhelming. People do want to, one of the major things in having liberty and quality of life is having shelter. That is the most prominent and profound need that all of us have, no matter what color we are, what religion we are, what background we are. To deny people of housing, quality housing, housing with dignity, is criminal. Is absolutely criminal. So we are going to have to utilize all different types of systems throughout the city of Evanston to really articulate indeed what we say our values are regarding housing, regarding residents, regardless to how they got here. Zoning is a place that needs to be updated. The zoning does need to be updated. It needs to be flexible. It needs to represent the 21st, 22nd century and how we're able to house people. But we must do this with dignity. That's my biggest issue, is that we have to do this with dignity. And people should not be ostracized by living only in a place that is earmarked as charity. If we're going to give people a place to live, make them feel as residents, help them become whole, then we have to do it with empathy. We have to make sure that they're safe, that they're healthy, and that we are meeting their needs, not just abandoning them in a room somewhere. I have been to the Margarita Inn, and I understand what their mission is. They are in court now. There is an injunction, as Ms. Krissie Harris said. So that's what I will speak on that, but I have been there. And we need to be clear with so many people that are the working poor here in Evanston, that we provide services that will help them not only get into housing that is safe and equitable, but stay in that housing. When I talk to those who are landlords, when I talk to
About
those
10 more seconds.
When we talk to others, those are some of the things that are very heartfelt on their mind as well, that they're supported as well as their tenants are supported.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
All right, this next one, and we're starting to run up on time, so I apologize if I start cutting people off. This next question is from Betty Esther and the Citizens Network of Protection. The city has recently requested approval of an additional drone surveillance technology package for the Evanston Police Department in order to address crime. Yet there are concerns from residents about threats to privacy. Would you approve the purchase of more drones for the Evanston Police Department? What other ideas do you have for protecting residents from crime? And we will start with Ms. Hayes.
You know, one of the major things to prevent crime is community. Being able to initiate community with all different types of neighbors here and there. Drones and other technical things are just an added tool. But the primary thing to divert crime and to eliminate issues of crime is having and rebuilding community, is my feeling. Yes, I have heard that there is another request for a drone. I know the fire department already has a drone for life safety issues. These are conversations that we need to understand in 3D about how it's going to protect the privacy and process of individuals as you go forward. How these drones are used will be essential on if it is going to protect the liberties and the rights of individuals as well. It is, we are catching up to the science, and we will have to adjust. But for right now, we need to have a very good conversation, an in-depth conversation on how a drone with the police department is going to assist in crime and crime prevention. Or and that conversation may have to be had by some of our better legal minds, our great legal minds, as well as those like the ACLU that leads on issues of freedom and liberty. We need to have, this is a very touchy subject. It is not a one fix. It is definitely something that needs to be studied. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harris.
Yes, thank you. It's a tricky question. So first, let me begin by saying that I'm very proud of our new chief of police, Chief Stewart. She is coming in and doing a great job and working very hard at getting policing to be respectable. Not that it wasn't, but she's working harder at making sure we are taking care of business in the police station. And she is doing, I respect her with the utmost. Drones, I think if it is for the safety of our citizens, we've seen an uptick in crime, again, throughout the whole United States of America. This is nothing new to Evanston or just isolated in Evanston, unfortunately. We've seen an uptick in crime, and it's very unfortunate. I'm also comparing it with the Ring cameras. You walk by anybody's house and they see you right there, walking your dog, walking down the street, doing nothing. Is that invasion of privacy or not? And how do we put those two together? That we maybe incentivize people having a Ring camera and turning over that information when a crime happens to the police department, because it's about community engagement. We want people's privacy invaded when we're harmed, and then we don't want to engage when other people are that victim. So how do we put those two together? How do we engage as a community to make sure the see something, say something philosophy is used, not just when it's in my benefit, but when it's in the benefit of the whole? So I think it's a very interesting discussion, and I'm excited about the possibilities from both sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Geracaris.
Yeah. I am almost 100% sure that early in my term, we had a drone purchase and it was approved. We had some discussion with Chief Eddington at the time, and I think it was only for joint use with the fire department. So I would have to see what the proposal is. Again, this is something, if Betty wants to sit down with me and talk, I'm always available to talk. We cannot be violating people's civil liberties, and with technology, it's a constantly changing thing. And so we would have to talk to legal. We'd have to talk with Chief Stewart, what they're going to use this for. They're pretty tight restrictions on what they can use it for. I quickly tried to look up my notes. I keep notes on meetings and post them with all my votes. Used to be on Twitter, now shifting to Google Docs and sharing them via email, Facebook, Mastodon. But yeah, I think one thing that I think hasn't been brought up, I think, desperate people do desperate things. And I think the uptick in crime has, kind of hand in hand with economic hardships and the pandemic. There are people who are really struggling. And I think, reaching people who are experiencing poverty and giving them services and health and workforce development will, I mean, it's a long, all these things are problems that take a lot of work. But I think we also have to look at social services and you know, propping people up and giving people options.
Okay. Ms. Cannon.
Thank you. I think Juan said it best. You know, we have seen an uptick in crime across the country, and there's been obviously an uptick here in Evanston. I am also concerned with the fact that, you know, people are we looking at the reasoning behind the crimes that people are committing? You know, since the pandemic, people have been struggling, and, you know, what are we doing to, you know, reach out to residents who are at risk to try to see that we can get them the resources that they need so that they're not resulting to crime. I do remember that there was a drone that was purchased when Chief Eddington was the interim police chief. And I know that the fire department also has a drone. And so I would like to gain a little bit of understanding about why we need a third drone. And as Kathy had said about the ACLU, you know, as far as, you know, so much, you know, monitoring of residents. You know, I am, you know, a big component of building community and residents collaborating together. And I think that the Ring doorbell is a safer route, you know, because if you are walking on someone's property or on the street, you know, you are recorded. So I mean, I know that I've had residents who I've talked to who said that they, you know, want a Ring doorbell, but they can't afford one. So that could be a safety issue that we could look at as well. But yeah, I would have to, again, see a little more data to, you know, really make a valid decision about an additional drone. Do we as a city of 77,000 need 3 drones? You know, so that's where I'm at. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we had several questions that related to affordability in the community and, you know, kind of the balance between affordability and development. And so from Erica Castro, I feel that the opening of Robert Crown was bad for the Second Ward. I had to find another place to live because the rent became so high. Even the prices of classes at Robert Crown are higher than they were in the old building. There was a tremendous amount of money spent on this project, and yet many residents can't afford to use it. And she also mentions the fact that the minimum wage is too low to afford property taxes, afford basic needs like gas and utilities. So what can you as council members do to make rec programs and other services more affordable and to make sure that future developments don't make the same mistakes as Robert Crown? So we'll start with Ms. Cannon.
Thank you. Yes, Robert Crown was one of the most expensive projects. When we looked at other developments in other states, you know, they built community centers that was for about $60 million less. I think that, you know, as guardians of the budget, we should be looking at how we're spending our money and looking at how we're spending our money that should enable us to, you know, reduce the cost of some of the services. I know people have said that when they were in the other building, childcare was more affordable, classes were more affordable, and now it's, you know, less affordable. So we need to look at, you know, how we're spending our money and see if we can, for lack of better words, cut the fat in some areas. And, you know, going forward, we need to make sure that we're building things that every resident in this community can utilize. We have two NHL hockey rinks. I mean, is it something that everyone in this community can utilize? I mean, we have a basketball court. I mean, what else could we have? I mean, I've heard lots of talk when there was talk about tearing down Fleetwood, talking about a swimming pool. And that those types of things that, you know, our community were looking for and want, that I think that we kind of missed the mark there with Robert Crown. I mean, it's a nice facility. I enjoy the walking track. That's a wonderful thing to have during the winter months. But we need to do a better job at community outreach and really listening and to what the community wants and what is going to best fit the needs of the community as well. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Geracaris, same question.
Yeah, I mean, this is like an incredibly complicated problem, right? We have, if you look historically, you know, underrepresented, marginalized communities don't get invested in. So, you know, you pay your property taxes and all the bright, shiny things get built downtown. And then, but now if you try to kind of reverse that and build infrastructure and serve all communities, then you have people looking at the cheaper houses around the nice, shiny new thing, wanting to move in. So, you know, gentrification's super complicated. I think, you know, being mindful of this phenomena is step one. I think, you know, making sure you have protections for, you know, residents being able to stay. You know, the affordable housing piece is huge, but and I know like the anti-gentrification measures, that's something we need to look at. But yeah, it's incredibly, and I think, you know, it's something that we have to look at all the impacts when we do these studies, like what is it going to do to the neighborhood, but, and, you know, always like listening and like looking towards progressive, like innovative ways to deal with these issues.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Harris.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make a point of clarity. And it's very strange. It was very strange to me when I took the seat. Robert Crown is not in the second ward. It is a fourth ward building. So everything in front of Robert Crown is second ward, and everything in front and behind is second ward. So I just want to be clear about that. But the impact is felt throughout that ward and the city in general. And I'll keep saying that. Our borders are air. So when new things come, unfortunately, it does raise the price and everybody wants to get there. Gentrification is a very real thing. We can look at that with the Fifth Ward school. It isn't just the second ward. Let's look at what's happening to the Fifth Ward, because we're talking about building a school with shiny bells and whistles. So let's be honest about what that is and how do we fix that in our communities. What I can say, because I'm always about solutions, is that there are scholarships available. I took advantage as a single parent. I took advantage of some of those scholarships because I needed help getting my children into great programs that would enhance their childhood, gymnastics. So there are scholarships available. And I think what the onus on me and our council is to make sure that people know that there are scholarships available to participate in these things. My son played hockey. So yes, and he was afforded scholarships to be able to play hockey, something that is disenfranchised to African Americans. And we knew that. And that's why we signed up for hockey. We took advantage. And when I say take advantage, not in a negative way, I don't want anybody to spin that. But we participated in the many opportunities that we know will give us the great possibilities later in life. So there are scholarships available to participate in the different city activities. There are different that the city provides. I'm sorry, say it again.
You have 5 more seconds.
Okay, so yes, we could do a better job at listing and helping people find resources that make these opportunities available to them in Evanston. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And Ms. Hayes.
Many of you have hit on amazing points. It is a very difficult and complex issue. How do you do development that enhances the community and articulates the values of the community, as well as keeping prices within the range of the community so that the community stays intact? Those, as we move forward with other developments all throughout the city, as Ms. Harris has pointed out, we have to keep that in mind. Impact studies such as economic development on all in these different areas makes a difference. We really have to look at other things besides the 2nd Ward, the 5th Ward, and the 9th Ward. We need to look at the 3rd and the 4th Ward. Some of these places need to also have some of the issues that of equity and involvement and inclusion that we're facing all the time in our other wards. Cutting the fat with the budgets is very important. If we say we value kids having an outlet and our students and our youth in the community, then we should value their families being able to put together a community for them to access these public spaces. I'm talking, these are public spaces that all of our taxes are being utilized for. These are public spaces that should be accessible to everyone. Yes, we should have scholarships, and we probably really need to look at the seriousness of expanding those scholarships, not to just low-income students and families, but also to middle-class families. The dollar is getting more and more stretched in all of our communities, and it is hard. I, like Ms. Harris, was a single parent and had to use scholarships and waivers for different things. So yes, we should definitely look at expanding that communication, but as a city, we need to, the onus is on us for the communication. We have to tell the people that it's there, if it even takes literally sitting up and taking them to the place that they are in, because we already have a communication problem.
All right, thank you so much, all of you. Okay, Nick.
Okay, we have a question from Kevin Brown. It is 80% of Evanston City staff live outside of this community, meaning decisions affecting residents are being made by those who do not have to live with the consequences. Also, Evanston residents, especially Black and Brown residents, do not seem to be getting hired for the city's highest paying jobs in large numbers, even though the city staff is one of the most well compensated in America. How would you increase hiring of Evanston residents? Would you be in favor of prioritizing Evanston residents for city jobs? And we will start with Ms. Hayes.
That is a big, huge conversation that I've had many times with friends and family members, as well as residents. We have such a talented pool of individuals here in Evanston. We have some of the brightest minds that live here, have grown up here, and have to go other places to shine. We don't get the plus of having their talent shared with the rest of the community that they love and really want to give back to. We have to, and I think some of the scandals that have happened with HR in the city of Evanston have outlined the fact that we need to revamp and relook at how the city of Evanston does business, especially with Evanston residents. There have been studies that have come out that have made recommendations. Those recommendations were kind of earth-shattering, to say the least. The Black employees have had the courage to come and articulate some of their issues. Are we going to solve all of them in one bite? No. But we definitely need to seriously look at how we are treating people in Evanston who we say we love and we appreciate and respect, and how we facilitate that when it comes to employment and development. I hope that, or my plan is to look at some of the best practices all over the country. We are not unique with this particular problem, but we do have issues. I do have family members that work for the city of Evanston, and there are some serious earth-shattering systemic issues that go on there. of unbalance that have nothing to do with merit. If we're going to get back to merit and equity, then we need to really do some hard, uncomfortable work of having uncomfortable conversations about how we treat our Evanston employees.
Thank you. Ms. Harris.
Thank you. So, yes, I think you're right. Evanston does need to hire more Evanston people if they're interested in working here. We're looking at the data to see how many Evanstonians have been denied or not applied for positions, right? Northwestern, ETHS, Evanston Hospital, St. Francis are all huge parts of our community where you may find other people in community work. I don't want to just say Evanston is not the only place that you can work. There are some other properties or agencies in the city that take up residents in the city. But yes, we need to look at our hiring practices. We are looking at our hiring practices. While Ms. Kathy said it was earth-shattering, I wasn't surprised. I've lived in this United States of America 53 years, and I see it everywhere. I've worked at Oakton Community College. We have issues. I dare anybody on this camera who works for somebody else to not say that they don't have some of these issues, because they are systemic and inherent in the place in which we live. So Evanston is being held accountable right now for what that. Oh, not sure how I got muted, but I got muted. And being held accountable for that. There's been a lot of turmoil before I got on council. And many of those people have been moved on, displaced, because of the issues that they have created in our city. We have to continually work at weeding out bad roots because they fester. And we're going to continually work on that. I encourage everybody to hold us accountable for that. There's many things behind the curtain. I call the city the Wizard of Oz, because what you see out there, yeah, what you see out there is not always what is behind the curtain. So we're going to keep working, and I expect everybody to hold us accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Geracaris.
Yeah, I think city staff and city leadership should reflect the community. And that means Evanston residents and people who look like people who live in Evanston. You know, a lot of great points have already been said. This is something the city has not been great at doing in the past. I have a lot of confidence in City Manager Stowe, and he's doing the work and reporting to us. And with a lot of this HR stuff, you know, you have to have policies in place, and you have to follow them, and you have to be transparent about why you're hiring people, who gets hired. I think in the past there's been, you know, the perception that, you know, we're denying people, and I think we just have to be upfront and transparent and do better. You know, a lot of the reports that, you know, have come out around the beachfront scandal are systemic problems that we have to address, and we have to be 100% transparent about what we are doing. And you know, part of the pay disparity was pointed out in the Baker-Tilly report, and that's another thing. We have to be completely transparent about who makes what and why, and have that information available for residents.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and one quick, well, I have 20 seconds. Just to clarify, Parks and Rec Board has authority for the prices, and we don't have any overview over that. We can advocate. I've been trying to get them to lower some of the prices. Prices are rising, as they say, to match other communities, but as Evanston, I think we should have lower prices for our community around the Parks District. So just wanted to add that very quick.
Thank you. And Ms. Cannon.
Yes, thank you. So I think pertaining to the city, again, GARE, the Government Alliance on Racial Equity, we have a membership with them. I have no idea why we don't utilize them. I think that, we should be trying to lean towards hiring people here in Evanston. We should be prioritizing them. And I think that it wouldn't hurt if our big employers like ETHS, District 65, the hospitals, Northwestern, prioritized hiring Evanston residents. As we see, the rapid decline of the Black population, and I attribute that to the fact that, people are not able to secure jobs here in Evanston and earn a living wage. People go to other communities and seek employment. We have, 80% or 90% of our city staff, and they don't live here in Evanston. So they help make regulations, ordinances, and legislation that impacts our lives, but they're not impacted by it. And, we just, hired, our city manager, Luke Stowe, and, he is not from here. I mean, not to say he's not doing a good job, but he doesn't live here. And, he's not college degreed either. So we should look at all kinds of options and variables to bring more Evanston residents, more Black and Brown people to be employed at the city and our other local large hiring entities as well. We should do everything we can to try to help the residents of Evanston to be able to stay here and, given, to be able to afford to stay here. And they can't do that if they can't get a job that in which they can provide for themselves or their families. So thank you.
All right. So I am really devastated to say that we are about out of time. We had many, many wonderful questions. So first of all, I would like to thank members of the community who took the time to put forward these terrific questions. And I apologize again for those of you whose questions we didn't get to. Would also like to thank my co-moderator, Nick Korzanowski, who is heading up our endorsement committee. And so we will be offering all the candidates a chance to sit down with that committee so that CABG can decide on our endorsement. But of course, most of all, I would like to thank our 4 candidates who took the time to meet with us today. Darlene Cannon, Juan Geracaris, Kathy Hayes, and Krissie Harris. And if you each want to take maybe just 30 seconds to just make a final statement, I think we have time for that. So we'll start with Darlene.
Okay, so thank you all for coming. And I'm looking, to build community and put the residents are my highest priority, and to center their concerns and their needs first. I, encourage, anyone who would like to join our team. We'll be outdoor knocking today to reach out. My website is darlenefor2.org. And thank you.
All right, thanks. Ms. Harris. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Geracaris. I can't alphabetize anymore. Mr. Geracaris.
Sure. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Just want to add a couple things. One of my big goals was to be very transparent. I encourage everyone to, follow me on Mastodon or Facebook. I post all my votes. Posting meeting notes. I'm probably the most transparent of all the city council members. I record my ward meetings. I have Spanish interpretation. And I think that's, pretty big as far as knowing what I'm about. I just put my City of Evanston email and phone number if anyone ever needs to get a hold of me. You can also, still new to this whole campaigning thing, but go to juangeracaris.com if you want to hear election type stuff. But thank you for your time, and have a good weekend.
All right, thanks. Now, Ms. Harris.
Thank you so much. So I appreciate everyone spending their morning with us pretty early. So you got up early because you're engaged. I appreciate that. That is the type of residents we are most excited about, people who are engaged, want to know more, want to offer suggestions. Suggestions are always welcome from any of us, most definitely from me. I will add my information at the end. Transparency is key. Communication is key, being able to articulate the needs of everyone, not just individually. As I sit in a seat, I'm representing everyone. So it can't just be my opinion. It has to be the opinion of the citizens based off the information that I know from a city perspective. So that's always important when selecting someone to represent you, that they're not just representing themselves, but that they're representing the city in which you live in and the ideas and thoughts that you manifest. I look forward to continuing to serve the city. Either way, I will be a resident and representative of the Second Ward. And I just appreciate you all being here. Have a great day and be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you guys for hosting, at CABG for hosting this opportunity for all of us to speak to community members. It is a highly valued pleasure to have that. We are all putting, I think, our information in the chat if you want to continue conversations with us. It is, I have to say, it's energetic that people have committed to doing this race. It is a difficult option to do for everyone. So please, please, please make sure you get out and vote. More importantly, keep having conversations with us about what you think can work better with solutions with this city. I believe that everyone that has been on this call has an open heart and is committed to making Evanston a better place. That's very important. That is why I'm running. That is my hope for running, not just for one community or the other, but for all of us who reside here in Evanston. I too will continue the work that I do because I love the work that I do regarding community. I always have. I've been blessed to have a career to do that. So come hang out with us, come knock on doors with us because we're getting a lot of shoe leather in, and come and join us with conversation and ideas, and most importantly, solutions that can make Evanston the prize ruby on the North Shore that it should be. Thank you.
All right. Well, and again, thank you to all of our candidates, to my co-moderator, and to all of you who turned in such wonderful questions. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the forum, we have recorded this forum. We will post it on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, and also on our website, which is evanstonalliance.com. So everyone stay engaged and get out and get involved and vote in April. And what is the exact date? Is it, I forget if it's April 2nd, April 4th. So be prepared to vote on April 4th. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.